What's up with the handwriting thing?
Yeah, it's true.
Is it really that difficult to be a doctor in Singapore? This is your daily Ketchup.
Boom.
So this episode is brought to you by Health Promotion Board Singapore. I think some of us are guilty about not following our doctor's advice when given a course of antibiotics. But we don't fully understand the consequences of misusing antibiotics. Spoiler alert! It's bad.
Oh no.
Anyway, so today we have Dr. Lee here with us. Dr. Lee is an infectious disease specialist and he is the head of the Antimicrobial Resistance Coordinating Office at the National Centre for Infectious Diseases.
Wow.
Look at you. That's like a mouthful.
Yeah.
Is your mother proud of you?
Yeah. So
What a
Doctor
flex.
is here to share about what it takes to become a doctor in Singapore and what it's actually like being a doctor in Singapore. And of course, how to use antibiotics appropriately and the consequences of not. So thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Lee, for being here. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You can say whether your mother is proud of you first.
Yeah.
I think my mom is proud of me.
Does she? You think she understands your job? Like beyond my son is a doctor. Like your other head of microbial
Micro.
Well,
on a virus. It's up to him.
Well, I don't think she really understands that part of the job.
Because neither do I though.
Never mind, you understand after this episode.
Did you want to be a doctor yourself, or did like your family your parents be like, be a doctor?
Oh no! I didn't face any parental pressure to be a doctor.
Relate.
But I mean, I decided to be a doctor by elimination. Like I know what I don't want to do.
Okay.
And then it narrowed down to either being a teacher or a doctor.
Very noble jobs.
Wow. Okay.
I suppose it's more of a safe kind of jobs.
I
the more
eliminated
traditional
doctor
jobs.
from my job.
I honestly feel like you want to pick doctor is not a very safe job. The point of dropout is there's so many touch points where you give up because the studies are so long or it's so hard, it's so tough, or you fail, you know what I mean? And then you spend 3-4 years there, then you just like...
Is that true though? Like, is the dropout rate high, like from medical school?
Oh, not really. In my school, it was 5 years. The dropout rate was really low. I think along the way, maybe 1 or 2 classmates drop out along the way. But
Did Grey's Anatomy affect your decision at all?
no, I think I was before the era of Grey's Anatomy.
wow.
Unfortunately,
Was it ER?
my era was more Chicago Hope and
Chicago
ER.
Hope.
Yeah.
I've never...
George Clooney as a doctor.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
Okay, so I have like a Reddit thread here, right, that I found that talks about how being a doctor is no longer glamorous. So some examples that they listed is after years of study, you are constantly going through like such a cutthroat, like competitive environment that's very, very stressful. There's long hours and doctors are often unappreciated. I mean, the fourth one, I'm not sure because we got clapped for y'all, right? So,
Yeah, man, I put my hand out the window.
I even cheer
I
like,
risked my watch dropping on the floor.
what do you think about like what this poster is saying on this thread? Like, is that the reality in Singapore?
Yeah, I don't think being a doctor is a glamorous job. At least not in the last, I suppose, 2 decades where I'm practicing.
Decades?
I've been working as a doctor for 17 years.
Wow,
So you
do the
can
math.
count do the math backwards.
No, you need to add the 5 years of medical school and then
Yeah, that's right. So you're like...
35.
41.
Oh.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, I don't think it has been really a glamorous job in the first place. Our lives are not as interesting or exciting or
Y'all
glamorous as what.
Y'all don't sleep around in the
No,
overnight rooms and
not
stuff.
at all.
Like,
So-
Grey's
so
Anatomy.
great.
I watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy.
He loves Grey's Anatomy.
No, so we don't call each other McDreamy and McSteamy and so on. You see,
Maybe it's a bad batch. Okay, carry on.
yeah, it's not as glamorous. I mean, it will make for boring TV, which is
Right.
why they had to jazz it up for TV. We do have long hours. We do have lots of responsibilities.
So then what would you say is like the best and worst part of being a doctor?
People, patients from all walks of life, from different strata of society. And I think
But like, for example, Grab drivers again.
yeah, it's true.
So tell me what you really like.
No, but the difference is that when we see our patients, they are actually at their most vulnerable when they are ill,
Right.
when they are sick. And at the same time, it's also the time where you see them when they are the most resilient. So it is really a big
Right.
contrast.
Interesting.
Like every day you see the challenge of the human spirit.
That's right. And so for me, as I help them, I'm also learning from them, human spirit, the human condition.
That's actually quite interesting because like everyone, like especially in a capitalist society, like everyone obviously has different like wealth or like different status or whatever. But when you get sick, we're all the same.
That's right. We're all equal.
He never said the worst part yet. But
Oh yeah, it was.
Oh, the worst part of being a doctor, I suppose, is probably the long hours, getting misunderstood in terms of our intention to our patients as well as their family members. So I think communication is the key.
So speaking of communication, right? Like, what's up with the handwriting thing?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, paracetamol is like just P and one line, like one horizontal line.
that's their code.
Yeah.
I may be a bit guilty of that, I must say. Well, not that bad, you know.
Okay.
I think it is still decipherable. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that people are always rushing, doctors are always rushing for time. But all hospitals have now gone electronic, so there's no more handwriting. Yeah, thank goodness.
How does medical school actually like prepare you for what you will see? You know, like from textbooks and then maybe some plastic rubber dummies, I don't know. To the first time you were handed the scalpel and just to make the first cut, it feels like assault.
But with consent.
Like, yo, I'm allowed. Are you sure I'm allowed, you know?
I think medical school, during my time, prepared us for half of the things that we do as a doctor.
Yeah.
So the theoretical part, you know, some of the practical aspects, yes, we are we are well trained in that.
Right.
But I think the more difficult part is the art part of being a doctor, practicing medicine. I think that is something that can't be really easily taught in medical school, although there's now, you know, in this era, more emphasis on that, challenging or difficult situations, breaking bad news to
So they
patients.
also have sandwich method for the bad news.
Well, similar. Well, there's a technique to it.
Interesting.
Try.
Oh.
Tell me
Like
I
you
have a
said-
very bad pimple on my back or something.
Or bad mole, is
Like, I
it?
will
Yeah.
look like this forever.
Oh my god,
Oh
don't say that lah.
no.
Hey, have hope, man.
Yeah, plastic
He
surgery.
switched on. I saw it too. Really.
Start cranking.
Yeah, I'm the family member.
Yeah, more lah, more lah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So, JP, you are here because you have a mole. You have been seeing me for a few visits now.
But off the bat, I know I'm gonna die, yeah.
Same as when I type the thing into Google.
No, well, you have to set the stage, right?
Yeah,
You can't be
correct,
smiling and laughing.
You cannot give them false hope.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have very good news for you.
Okay.
Or maybe I did a wrong example.
Sekali you be like Gordon Ramsay, it's like unfortunate, but actually it's good news. But actually it's bad news.
No, I mean the long, the full version of it is that I need to make sure that you have who you need in the room with you, you know,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and make sure you are settled down, and telling you that I don't have very good news for you.
Right.
Yeah, because you know we are not supposed to beat around the bush.
It's true.
Okay.
Similar to finding someone, you should just be upfront about it.
Yeah.
I also heard that it's very important to bring a loved one, because when you are hearing bad news about yourself, your mind sometimes just wanders. Like you start thinking about, oh no, like I'm gonna die or whatever, and you should have someone by your side to listen to all the details about what you need to know. Is that true?
It depends. It depends on the patient's preference. Some patients prefer to do it themselves, and we respect the patients for whatever that they decide to do, they choose to do. I mean, different people function quite differently, and they have their own preferences.
So maybe you can share a bit, right? Because you're an infectious disease specialist. What exactly does working in this field entail?
Right. So essentially, we see patients with infectious diseases. My colleagues from other specialty can treat various types of infections, but the more complicated ones, you know, the more serious ones, sometimes they refer to us to advise them and guide them along in their management. So like other doctors, we do our ward rounds, we see our patients who are hospitalized in the wards. We also run clinics, but of course these will be the more specialized ones in terms of these patients having more severe or complicated infections.
So you need to like extract sample, then go see under microscope, then
We will routinely do swabs, wound swabs, or swabs from a pus, and then we send them to the lab. Then the reading of the samples are done by our microbiologists
Right.
in the laboratory. Yeah.
So is it like the ward is like everybody is like got the plastic sheet covering, then you need to wear the hazmat suit, then
Does a
it's
day in your
infectious
life
disease,
look
mah.
like you show up to work, you take out your jacket, and then you wear a hazmat suit?
Well, no, usually not that dramatic. But I mean, on TV, everything is more dramatic. But it depends on what kind of infection the patient has. So if the patient has got a wound infection, then we may not necessarily need to wear an N95 mask and that hazmat suit. Kind of,
What warrants a hazmat suit?
pathogens or those bacteria or viruses that can cause very serious infections, and also those that are very transmissible. So I would think that if there's a case of Ebola or Marburg viruses, then we will have to wear
Have we
those
treated
types.
Ebola here?
No, we have thankfully no Ebola cases in
Well,
Singapore.
he would know. Like literally, I was like, how
Yeah.
would he know? That's like, yeah, he would know. He's the head.
I'll be so sian if I cannot like hear itchy, right? Then the next moment, right, the guy with hazmat suit.
Yeah, lah. then he does the spiel. So you come and see me about more.
Unfortunately, I have not so So, because I, like especially during maybe like the COVID period, right? I interviewed like a nurse that was sharing about how complicated the procedures was because she was working in an infectious disease ward. So it's like she need to go through like 3 rooms to like change gown or whatever in order to get out of the hospital. Is it actually like that?
Yeah, so when COVID-19 first struck, there were a lot of unknowns about the viruses, about the virus. So how it transmits, how it infects other people. So we were wearing N95 masks, we were wearing a hairnet to keep our hair in, wearing a gown, gloves. But as we know more about the disease, then some of these things could be stood down. But yes, in the initial part, before we enter a patient room, we gown up, we wear gloves, and then before we leave the patient room, we then have to dispose of these before moving on to the next patient in another room, and then we go through the same process again. And of course, then in between we have to wash our hands or use alcohol on our hands multiple
Scared,
times.
right? Actually, like you cannot be like 100% fully trust the integrity of the suit or that the way you wore the suit, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I do have quite a bit of confidence in those protective gear
Nice.
because this is what is recommended by our hospital infection prevention and control team, and it has really served us very well.
Wait, do you wear the suit yourself? Or is it like, the TV, they got the doctor goes in like that, right? Then the nurse will...
Yeah.
So for COVID cases, we wear the gowns ourselves because in those situations you see it's probably because they have to be sterile.
Yeah, the surgical...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but when we go in, we don't have to be...
They're just protecting themselves.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't have to be sterile.
Is there an ideal format to explain to a doctor what's happening with you?
When we get history from patients, we tend to like it in two types of format.
Oh,
Either
nice.
you tell me what is your main complaint now, like cough, I'm having a cough, right? And then tell us in chronology. Started 2 weeks ago when I was doing this, and over the past 2 weeks it has gotten worse and worse, and so on, and then along the way, 1 week ago I started to have fever. So best in chronology. That works for us.
Okay. Say for example, right? So this I think about this also when I need tech support or whatever, right? I got multiple problems. But I don't want to confuse the doctor because I do have a main complaint, then I got secondary complaint.
Then there's that mole in your neck.
Yeah. So I feel like I go in with like, say I broke my arm, right? But I also have a really bad cough. And I'm going to the GP, right? So then I go in, right? I talk about my broken arm, right? Then after everything finished, as I leave it, I realized, I got that bad cough. Should I have spoken about both things?
You have saved money.
Yeah.
One
you say about
consult, one
consultation.
consult.
That's right, and also it saves time as well, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what you could do is that you can tell the doctor upfront. Actually, I have 3 things I want to tell you about.
Right.
Right. I think that will help, and also that will help the doctors in planning the time. How much time to allocate for your consult.
Right.
see,
Okay.
I have a stupid question, right? So every time you want to go inside the doctor room, you're supposed to knock, then after you go in, right? Does that actually affect the doctor? You don't knock the doctor's
It's just
door?
polite, right?
Yeah. I always know.
Yeah, I suppose it's just polite to tell them that there's someone coming in.
But it's not like they're shocked and then they're like hiding.
Oh no! I mean,
like
they
this.
did press the button to get your number displayed, right? So I think they're expecting you to come in.
Random question. I like to always, as a term of endearment, right? Say hi doc instead of saying hi doctor. Do doctors like
You
that?
act cool,
Oh
yeah.
no, I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
I'm trying to be
hi doc.
in the know, like this guy calls us doc. Wow, he knows the lingo.
What lingo? You got bro. It's the more underground one.
It's like the ch, but then the...
Yeah. Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Oh yeah, and then the other thing about what you mentioned, what you asked earlier about 3, different conditions. You may think that these are 3 separate things.
Unrelated, but actually it might be the same thing.
It could triangulate the
Cough
same thing.
related
Right.
to my broken head.
Like your mole cause you to have vision blur. Don't break your hand.
You never know.
Is there something that shocked you after you came out of medical school and then you finally you enter the actual field, right, and industry? Was there something that surprised you?
Oh, so for infectious diseases, we don't do a lot of procedures. So we don't really do we don't do surgeries.
Right. But in medical school you have to play lah, right?
Well, we do have to do some simple ones when we are training as a junior doctor.
So have you cut someone out before lah?
Yeah, I mean the simple ones.
What was that like? What was that like? Can you give me like a rundown of the emotions and the thoughts?
Wait, it's a real person, man.
I mean, it is a real person,
a
but I'm
junior
not really
doctor,
cutting up the person, right? The person already has a splinter in the hand that requires me to remove it. So I just inject some local anesthesia, enlarge the incision a bit, and then just pull it out. So those are the simple things.
Right.
Yeah, so I've done it
like jelly or something.
No, I'm quite okay with those. Yeah, and releasing those under the nail kind of blood.
Oh yeah, that's pretty shit, man.
But those are very satisfying.
Oh, you are.
Is it you want to people popper also?
Yeah, because the pain gets better almost immediately.
Right.
Yeah, so the patient's like, wow, okay,
Their face really changed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
The ROI
when you're doing it, also, you're like,
Yeah. So if they're under a lot of pressure, it actually squirts out with you can hear it.
You sound wrong.
What's like the most complicated case you had to crack?
Wow.
Made you realize that you made for a hit off.
I just recall a case in terms of a patient with a very resistant bacterial infection, and he had a previous surgery done a few years ago, and this time around the same site got infected, and we found that it was around his aorta, which is the main blood vessel in the body. The clot has moved off into the leg,
Right.
causing blockage of the artery in the leg.
You see how I follow? See what's Grace next to me. Sorry, please carry on.
And all this started from an infection.
Yeah, infection around the aorta.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And unfortunately for him, this happened to be caused by a very resistant strain of E. coli.
Right.
E. coli like in Yakult.
Yakult is not E. coli, it's another...
Sorry.
I just had one this morning. Like, what are you talking about?
It's the bacteria that's in Yakult.
But got one collie one. Yeah.
They will show the picture.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys.
But I think it's the LKC Shirota strain.
Oh.
What I remember from the commercial.
Terrible plug.
Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, so we had to think of what antibiotics we could give him to treat his condition, and unfortunately it is resistant to your first line, second line antibiotics.
and you said first tier and second tier.
First line.
Or first line, second line. What's that?
And how many lines are there?
Well, usually when we treat an infection, we will go for the antibiotic that is proven to be most effective and also the safest, right, in terms of side effects. So these are the ones that we say first line, second line antibiotics.
So is that the most common? Like if I go to a GP right now and I have a bacterial infection, I'm most likely going to get a first line.
Yes, but if these don't work anymore, then we have to go for later line antibiotics. Generally, these tends to be given through injections.
Oh.
That's a deal breaker.
Yeah, so
But you are in the bed and you're already plugged in.
Yeah, give me some time.
so that these tend to have to be given through injections. There could be more side effects, and also more costly.
So just now you mentioned that this is because of antimicrobial resistance, is it? Can you
Elaborate.
tell me what that is? Yeah.
So I think to explain that, I would first explain what is microbes or microorganisms. Right, so
we have to go that far back.
Yeah.
We have to go anti first.
We spiral. Okay. Then.
So microbes or microorganisms or germs can be four major classes. You've got bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. To tackle these four classes of microorganisms, then you have got the four different kinds of antimicrobial medications. Right. So for bacteria, you use antibacterials or antibiotics. For viruses, it'll be antivirals, and so on.
Like fungal infection, usually people kind of understand what that is, right?
Yeah.
But like
try
between
it,
You
virus,
expect fungi.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
you know it's fungal in nature. No, but usually like the common cases for those things happening, right? Is like it's not like you feel sick and whatnot. You know, it's like a certain kind of rash or a certain kind of rotting and whatnot. Those are the common kinds of stuff you see. So you never really. So when the guy tell you, oh, you got a fungal infection, it's like okay, you know. But when you have a viral infection or a bacterial infection, you just feel sick. Yeah, you feel like maybe a fever or just like body ache and whatnot, right? So like, what is the key? Yeah.
Dr. Lee giving you chance. Yeah.
Not bad. Okay, you carried on for 30 seconds straight. Yeah, that's very not bad.
I give you away.
So to start off, maybe I'll just correct some misconceptions
Okay,
about
okay.
fungal infections. Yeah. Okay, so the fungal infections that we know of are on our skin, right?
So can see one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we
you got-
tried so far.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, you
Yeah.
got a rash. It come athlete's foot, for example. These are fungal infections, but fungal infections can also go into the blood.
Right.
Oh.
Right, it can go into other organ systems like the heart, the eyes, and so on.
Right.
And
The
generally,
eyes?
yeah. So generally, this happen in patients who are already very sick in the first place, and so this fungi take the opportunity when
I
the
can't
person's
do
immune
fungi yet.
system.
I need some time to get past this hurdle.
Wait, this is in the air one.
Yeah, I was gonna ask
Or
how
from
do
like
I
mushroom. Or like what?
I don't know why.
Like, yeah, is it like
Might
you
hear
inhale
it.
or encounter their pores? Is it like this?
Yeah,
thing?
so we actually do carry quite a bit of fungi in our body, in our gut, in our mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, so when a person's immune system is weak, it can enter into our bloodstream,
Right.
causing diseases. Of course, then you have other sorts of fungi that's in the air that we can inhale. But most of us, because we're healthy, good immune system, nothing happens to us.
Right.
Yeah, but there are people with poor immune system that they are susceptible to these infections.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then back to difference between bacteria and viruses.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow, this
Yeah,
one
yeah,
is
yeah.
my first learn in bio.
Because I googled this like 3 times, then I always think I get it, I move on. Then like tomorrow you ask me, I don't know.
I'm traumatized by the image of the
Wait, you
lambda
know?
fish.
Wait, you know the answer?
Yeah, I learned it in school.
Oh, then you
want
try?
to try?
Oh,
You want to try?
I don't want.
you try, you traumatized, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now my next episode of psychologist will fix your trauma.
So what's the difference between antimicrobial and antibiotic resistance?
Antimicrobial resistance means that there's ability of these microorganisms to withstand the
It's the
effects
same
of the
image.
antimicrobial drugs.
Yeah.
So, for example, if it's antibiotic resistance, means that the bacteria are resistant to the antibiotics or antibacterial.
No
that is-
effect.
Yeah,
Right.
no effects. So, if we don't finish the course of antibiotics as told by your doctor, then there's a chance that your infection is not fully treated. Bacteria that survive during the first round of antibiotic course then may repopulate, and then these are the resistant ones. So that
Right.
makes treatment more difficult.
Okay, never mind. We put a visual here so people like Denise can understand.
Yeah.
It's because I was googling the definition of bacteria.
Sorry, but the bacteria thing, right, is like bacteria were among the first life forms to appear on Earth. Like this.
Because the
Sing-
mitochondria
single cellular organism.
Yeah, it's simple organisms.
Yeah.
Wait, I got a question. So right, there was once where I had to take like antibiotics, right? Then I clear all the thing already. Then a few months later, I go and see the packet because I want to throw away, right? Then got one more left. If I whack that one, right, is it okay?
I would suggest then you just leave it alone. It has been months
late,
since
is it?
you've been.
The last one.
No, it's okay. Just leave it.
Same principle as
Just
your ex.
it has been months away, so
Your ex is a principal.
you've
So I
already
don't
missed-
need to finish that last one.
Extend the job.
No, it's been months away, so yeah, you
Too late already,
Yeah,
too
just
bad.
discard it. Yeah.
I've always been very curious, like
Yeah lah. I'm scared. Right?
I've always been very curious, like how do doctors decide what is the cost? Because sometimes, right, like you open the box and then there's actually 10, but then they'll cut off one and say, okay, your cost is 8. And then like how do you determine what the cost should be?
Yeah. So the duration of the course of the antibiotics, we know through studies what is the most effective duration. So typically it would be 5 days, 7 days, 3 days, and so on.
Right.
Yeah. So it's based on prior medical studies.
Understood. Okay.
I've heard this because of how our body is building resistance, as in you kind of affect the human population if you yourself don't complete your course of antibiotics, because it requires people to then create more and more and stronger, right? To the point that we might run out of new antibiotics that we can create. Does that make sense?
Well-
I feel like I read that somewhere.
Unfortunately, the development process is quite complicated, quite complex.
Right.
For companies to market antibiotic, they have to go through rounds of research and trials to make sure that these work and are safe. And antibiotics are a bit different from other medications. For example, anti-high blood pressure drugs or anti-cholesterol drugs. Those medications you actually take for months or years. Whereas antibiotics, typically you take for a few days and you stop it.
The profit margin.
The promise of revenue, long-term revenue is like
Yeah, so it is not conducive for drug companies, to produce antibiotics in that way. Yeah, so you're quite right in saying that bacteria are very good evolution, right? They have been around for much longer than
Optimized.
humans or other animals. And part of evolution, they reproduce very quickly. They can get resistant genes. They develop resistance very quickly, and so that outpaces the development of new antibiotics.
Right.
When we take antibiotics wrongly, means we don't finish our course of antibiotics as told by the doctor, or if we share antibiotics with other people, or we keep leftover antibiotics for future use, these are not good practices. And if I have resistant bacteria, I can also spread it to other people. So these are the complications of antimicrobial resistance.
So how serious of a problem is this in Singapore, like right now?
So we're actually seeing the effects of antibiotic resistance currently. It is not so much in the future. We are seeing right now in our patients. So it's not just a danger to myself, it's also danger to people close to me.
Right.
If I spread the resistant bacteria to other people.
So I think you briefly touched upon it, but what exactly are the types of misuse of antibiotics?
Well, there are different types of misuse. So, example could be that of adjusting your own dosing of the medication of the antibiotic.
Like not listening to your doctor, like how many you should take.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you can't take all at one go. Neither should you reduce your own dosage. So then the other type of misuse will be keeping antibiotics for future use.
Right.
And also sharing your antibiotic with others, because then the other person may not even have a bacterial infection in the first place.
Right.
May not even need antibiotics.
And keeping means I have extra. We shouldn't be.
Exactly.
Like hoarding, for what?
Yeah, I feel like I do have a couple of tabs of antibiotics.
I confirm have. I never ever finish my antibiotics. Just saying.
So don't listen to the needs.
So know that this is a threat to humanity.
Yeah. No. So next time I fall sick, then I know.
It's not just a you problem now.
Apparently you can't drink, right, when you are on antibiotics.
So sometimes it depends on the type of antibiotics.
Right.
You may get more pronounced side effects when you drink alcohol.
So which one can drink? Just kidding. I don't drink. I just
We also list down for you right now.
So wait, but are there actually times where I don't need to finish my course?
That will be in settings where the doctors have done tests and monitor you over a few days, and then to tell you that actually you don't have a bacterial infection, but because you were sick in the first place, we had to give you antibiotics just in case because you were so sick.
Okay.
So it's not my house downstairs, the clinic lah. As in, I'm admitted to hospital, then the doctor is trying to figure out what I have.
Generally, that's the case. Yeah.
So then, how do we prevent this? The antibiotic resistance.
Okay. So always listen to your doctor. If the doctor tells you not to take antibiotics, you don't need antibiotics, then don't demand antibiotics.
Yeah.
It's
so
so
strange.
demand antibiotics.
Yeah, because there was that whole campaign that we saw, I think like 2-3 years ago, where it's like, if it's virus, don't ask for antibiotics, because people just keep thinking antibiotics is going to fix a cough.
That's right. Yeah. So most of the time, coughs and colds, runny nose is not due to bacterial infection. It's due to viral infections, and antibiotics do not work against viruses.
Yeah.
So
you're
taking
antiviral.
Yes, that's right.
But the
yeah.
thing is that antivirals don't seem like a very common thing that like a GP would give. Is there a reason for that? Is it expensive or hard to find? Or
Yeah, so there are not that many antivirals that is being produced or designed for various types of viral infections.
Right.
So that's the main reason why antivirals are not commonly given, or that you may not encounter them in the first place. And by and large, most cough and colds are self-limiting illness. That means if you don't do anything about it, most patients get better on their own anyway.
Why is that so?
It just runs its own course.
Because we're strong.
Your immune system takes over and then fights
right.
off the viral infections.
Is it true that the cold weather gives me a flu?
Well, the cold weather, so it depends on what you mean by flu. So it could be runny nose, sneezing. And it could be because when you are in a cold environment, you tend to spend more time indoors, right? And so it could be the house allergens, allergic compounds that make you... Yeah, and then the other aspect is that you do tend to catch a cold or a viral infections in the cold weather. Also because people tend to then congregate in a warm environment, in a room. People tend to spend more time indoor and close contact with each other.
conducive.
Yeah,
for spreading.
That makes so much
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah.
I must tell this to my mom. Then so I have another medical misconception that I found here, which says the color of your mucus can determine the type of infection that you have.
Okay, so that is really a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Which you found.
but there's actually not much correlation between whether you have a a clear mucus or yellow mucus.
No, but
or
it's
green
like clear mucus means I'm not sick yet, right?
Well, clear mucus could mean the very, very early periods of a viral infection. So the color of the mucus or the sputum, the phlegm doesn't tell.
Sputum, shit. Does that mean phlegm?
Of phlegm, yes.
Sorry, we will put the definition.
No
of
more
sputum.
phlegm for me. Sputum.
Because I spew it out.
No shit.
But the spelling completely different.
Then Tom, explain Tom. The sound it makes when you spit it out.
Yeah, so there's not much correlation between that to tell whether it's a viral infection or a bacterial infection.
Right.
So both bacterial viral can be yellow, green.
It could be
Red.
and in different stages of the illness. Yeah. If it were only so easy to tell, then we could, you know.
Yeah.
I will be a doctor.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So when the doctor asks you what's the color of your phlegm, they're looking at what? Severity, yeah.
Just small talk.
What's your favorite color?
Personally, we do ask it because there are some conditions, especially those with chronic lung conditions,
Right.
where increase in the yellow or green type of phlegm more likely indicates a bacterial infection.
Right.
Yeah, so that is in a subset of patients.
More likely.
More likely. Yeah.
It's upset. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe let's not add this part. It's like bad for humanity.
Once again, thank you to Health Promotion Board and the National Centre for Infectious Diseases for being our partners in today's episode. And thank you, Dr. Lee, for joining us today. I think like all of us now have a better understanding of what we should and should not do with antibiotics. There's more information down in the link in our description box, but make sure if you're unsure about anything, ask your doctor. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Antifungals.
Oh, that changed it from fun guy to fun girl, huh? I never noticed that.
Fun girl.
You cannot say fungi anymore. It's like you break so many jokes.